the agenda as presented.
Council? Yeah, Brandon, do you have a question?
Are all other fees the same? You mentioned the ones that changed, and then you mentioned the ones that
All
didn't
other fees that are
change.
contained in there are the same.
Yeah, okay.
So the solid waste, the environmental services, we added fees for the environmental service trucks in the event those would have to be used for something. The water sewer rates, the tap fees, anything else that is in there, including the SDF fees, remain as they currently are this evening.
Thank you.
And the effective date of those would be July 1 with the new budget.
All right.
Are there any other questions on the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you, Manager Parsons. Moving on to public comment. If you have a public comment, we didn't have a sign up this evening, I don't think, or maybe we did. We limit our public comment to 3 minutes. Our town clerk, no, we don't. Oh, no one signed up, that's what you're telling me. Okay, thank you. All right, if you didn't have a chance to sign up, but you would like to speak, you may come forward, just introduce yourself and give your address, and we'll make sure we get your name for the record. Is there anyone? Yes? Good evening, Ms. Tusing. Just introduce yourself.
Erin Tusing, 210 Grove Road. I just want to say thank you for always being
Make sure it's on.
Okay. You heard me though, right? Say thank you for being open to the public and always putting yourselves out there to hear what we have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, too. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our public hearings. Our first agenda item this evening is AX-01-25, the voluntary. Oh. We're all having that evening. All right, our first public hearing, AX-01-25, the voluntary annexation of .54 acres at 490 Stonyfield Drive. And I know we have Mr. and Mrs. Reagan, our applicants, here with us this evening.
Good evening, members of council. BJ Grieve with the Town of South Pines Planning Department. I'm here to make a brief presentation regarding the request for annexation by Dennis and Patsy Reagan. They are requesting voluntary annexation of just over a half an acre that is currently outside of corporate limits. The subject property, I'll come over here. The subject property is located on Stonyfield Drive. Just to get you oriented, this is Fort Bragg Road right here. This is East Indiana right here. So at that intersection, you go south on East Indiana, then in on Stonyfield. And I'll point it out for the audience here. This is Fort Bragg Road. Here is East Indiana, and coming in here on Stonyfield. You notice it's down here at the corner. That is because the Trawick subdivision is right next to the subject property, and when they installed the sewer lines for the Trawick subdivision, the sewer line comes down, and the end of it, which it obviously drains to the north, but the end of it was right here, enough to serve these two lots within the Trawick subdivision, but it also made it adjacent to the Reagan's property. So once they were ready to connect, they were able to connect to it. It's already been stubbed out. A service lateral has already been installed. It was done when the sewer line was installed. And so now they're requesting annexation in order to connect to it.
Very good. Council, do you have any questions? All right, would the applicant like to speak? You don't need to, but since you're here, you're welcome to. Okay.
Do you have town water already? Yes, we do. That's going to go down.
Yeah. All right, is there a motion or other questions?
I have no questions. I will, did you
It's a
have
public
something?
hearing, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Go ahead.
Public hearing now closed. I'll make a motion to adopt an ordinance approving voluntary annexation request in AX-01-25 for the property as defined in the submitted legal description, and to have the ordinance effective immediately.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
You're fine. That's fine.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to being a Southern Pines resident.
Welcome to No Septic Tank.
Who knew you didn't have to move?
Congratulations.
Was, glad it was, yeah.
Okay, moving on to our next agenda items. I think we're going to do B and C together. Yes, okay, so we have OA-03-24 and Z-04-24 and OA-0424, our landscaping and tree protection amendments and zoning map amendment and text amendment to create character districts.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. BJ Grieve with the Town of Southern Pines Planning Department. I'm here to speak briefly to a project that has been a long time in the works. The first introduction of this item was in November of 2024. It was then continued to December, at which time some changes in North Carolina general statute had made it so that adoption of any zoning that would create nonconformities was not allowed. However, that was at the end of the last legislative session. However, as you are aware, in this legislative session, there is some work to possibly change that language, and the current version of it that appears to be most preferred to move forward is numbered Senate Bill 587. That has moved ahead in the horse race, if you will, from I believe it was 765, 785. And so the Senate Bill 587 is currently pending, and I checked in today with Michael Zamer, who is the Legislative Committee Chair for the American Planning Association North Carolina chapter, just to see what the status was, and he did confirm that, yes, that is still active, and they are monitoring it, and it is the most likely alternative to move forward. That said, he gave me an estimate that, as well as our town attorney, have estimated that by August, we should have a much clearer picture on whether or not the North Carolina statutes may be changed as a result of any legislation in the current session. And therefore, we are recommending another continuance of these items, both file number OA-0324, which is the landscaping and tree protection amendments, as well as Z-0424 and OA-0424, which is both text and map amendments to create two character districts. We recommend they be postponed to the September meeting. The exact date of that meeting is in my staff report, but I don't remember it off the top of my head right now. I apologize.
So if 587 passes, will we be able to move forward on these items?
As presently drafted, if Senate Bill 587 is adopted and becomes law, yes, we'd be able to move forward on these because local governments would be able to go back to adopting zoning that creates nonconformities.
Okay.
And if you have any questions about that, or if I should explain it for the record, let me know. Otherwise, it's been talked about a fair bit in previous meetings available on YouTube.
Does anyone have questions?
What was that date, Beth?
September 9th.
Do you all have any other questions about the continuation? No, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue OA-03-24, Z-04-24, and OA-04-24 to our September meeting on September 9th, 2025.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grieve.
Yeah, get to do something then in September.
Right.
It would be nice to move forward on those. Okay, moving on, we have our town manager, Reagan Parsons, with our final hearing on our 2025-26 budget. And I believe this evening you're requesting approval of the budget, so if council or public has any questions or comments, we will have time for that. Okay.
Yes. Madam Mayor, members of council, again, good evening. Members of the public and the streaming public also. Here to present the second hearing for the draft 2025-26 fiscal year budget for Southern Pines. As stated last month and again at the work session, the general intent of this is to abbreviate the presentation that I provided last month, which is still available via online resources. And there we go. All right. So again, big picture wise, we are looking to continue our existing services, maintain the staff that we have in place. We have serviced all of the debt that is currently on the books for the town. We are advancing a number of capital projects, a couple of new programs and projects, and we continue to maintain a minimum 25% reserve fund balance or rainy day fund. Number of those capital project funds that we will be transferring monies to include the annual street resurfacing program, the general capital reserve. We are looking to set aside money for a new fleet facility. The $300,000 will work toward the design and creation of bid packages for that project. We have $280,000 for sidewalk projects to include the final block of the ongoing work on Bennett Street, in addition to some improvements of the sidewalk area or right-of-way area on Southwest Broad Street with the relatively recent changes to the one-way activity there. So in front of Harbor Laundry in that particular block, we have some improvements to be made. And then a $95,000 transfer to the Facility Modernization Fund, very specifically to work on replacing the slate roof on the admin building there in the downtown park. In addition to that, we've got a number of other significant projects, including replacing $348,000 in vehicles, quite a few lighting and irrigation projects throughout the downtown and pool park areas. Of course, we originally talked a little bit about lighting at the skate park, but we did go ahead and get that funded in the current fiscal year, so that is no longer on the screen here. Some new street leaves, some new lifts for that fleet garage that we talked about. And again, I had mentioned the East New Hampshire right-of-way project. Your available fund balance by the time we go through the both anticipated revenues and expenditures being budgeted sits currently at about $655,000. That is money over and above the 25% reserve, which is also listed on the page in front of you as 3 months expenditures. So what can the residents expect to see in the way of change? First of all, the property tax rate remains the same, and it is not a reval year. So the property tax bill, except for people that may have added some things or the county has some new record for, will look very similar to what it did in the current fiscal year. That's at 29 cents per 100 assessed value. The monthly waste fee is scheduled to increase by $4.25 in July, bringing it to $25.25. $27.50 for businesses, and the recycling opt-in program remains at $10 per month. Water and sewer rates, after discussion with the council during the retreat, will increase by 2%, both on the base and on the per 1,000 rate that is charged, which comes to, for an average customer of 5,000 gallons a month, a $1.60 increase each month of the year. This graph I just re-included, so if you know what the value of your home is according to the Moore County tax appraiser, you can take a look at this chart and get an idea of what you will be paying the town of Southern Pines in property taxes. Again, this is separate from what is paid to Moore County, but the Southern Pines portion of that on a $450,000 home, for instance, is $1,305. That bottom brown band on this chart, the $492,950 is not a random number pulled from space, but in fact the average value, or I'm sorry, not average, median value of land and structure provided to us by Moore County for a residence in Southern Pines. So the average taxpayer has $492,950 worth of asset. And when you do the math on that at a 29-cent tax rate, the town tax bill will be $1,429.56. On the water and sewer operation side, again, with those 2% increases, we're looking at a base rate of $22.90 or a 45-cent increase in the bill, and then 2% to the consumption rates. Again, it comes out to $1.60 per month if you're using 5,000 gallons of water. Our debt service that I had mentioned earlier, 1/3 of the community development building happens to be paid for through the enterprise fund. So that's a $33,000 payment, and we've got a $302,000 balance on that. In addition, we have an Asadra loan in place that is on some ongoing wastewater work, and that payment will be $228,000 this year. And with that, I am happy to take any questions from the council or return to my seat if we have any questions or comments from the public. I will say thank you again to the council, to certainly all the members of the staff, the finance office who gets all these numbers together in the spreadsheets, and certainly all the directors and their crews that kind of put the projects in. It's a really a year-round process, but it's very hardcore for about the first 3 to 4 months of the year, from January through April, when we meet with the council. And then finally, also just recognition to both Assistant Manager Roth and our now former communication specialist Gerald Oslin, who helped with all of the graphics and visuals in the presentation. And
think
with
I can-
that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
I think I can speak for the council by saying we appreciate the work that you all have put into it, and it has been a busy but well-run budget season, and I think it's made our jobs easier, so we appreciate the work you did ahead of time. Do you all have any questions on the budget? Okay,
I have no questions. I hope Tess is going to take a break shortly.
all right. Seeing no questions up here, it is a public hearing, so if anyone from the public would like to speak, now is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none. Are you all ready to make a motion? And I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you. I told you, it feels like it's been forever since I've been up here. All right. Public hearing is closed if there is a motion.
Is that 6A? I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 3121, the fiscal year 25-26 budget, setting our ad valorem tax rate at 29 cents per 100, in addition to 80 cents per 100 valuation on the MSD Morgan Park South.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to action items. We have a request for adoption of ordinance 3121. Just kidding. Wait. Oh, yeah, because that's the action part of it. Okay. The watershed protection permit for Mill Creek Road. So 6B. Thank you.
You need some sugar.
No, you're eating so much sugar over there. And peanut butter. Director Grieve, good to see you back.
Thank you. Good to be seen. Good to be here. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is BJ Grieve with the Town of Southern Pines Planning Department, here to present a request for watershed protection permit number WP 0225. This is a request for exemption allocation of 1.67 acres in the Little River number 2 watershed. The property that we're looking at this evening, on the map here, you can see there is the Harris Teeter Fuel Station. That property was granted 1.5 acres of exemption allocation in 2018. You can see that the Harris Teeter itself, in 2010, was granted 21.98 acres. At that time, the exemption allocation was not for the entire Mill Creek development. It was just for Harris Teeter, as well as some out parcels in front of Harris Teeter. So this is a request the request is by Corporation Services Company on behalf of Mavis Southeast, and that would be, when you see driving down the road, a Mavis Tire Center. Mavis Tire would like to go right there. In order to do that, we do have the ability to grant the exemption allocation. Kind of an interesting note on this request is that our amount of acreage in the bank, you might say, in the Little River number 2 watershed has increased. It was previously 589 acres, but as of October 1st, 2024, has increased to 710 acres. And this is because, you may recall, Moore County allocated a little over 100 acres, 121 acres to us, and so that bumped up that total. A brief moment to give a shout out to our manager, Reagan Parsons, who did a tremendous amount of heavy lifting on the minutia of minutia on this issue, and made a trip all the way to the state to talk with us to get the state to approve that transfer of exemption allocation. So we certainly appreciate that. But with that, it is, as I said, a request for 1.67 acres. The use is allowed, the tire center is allowed there. You may recall there was an amendment to the special use permit recently where there were quite a bit of, that was the famous nightclub discussion that took place regarding, that was the special use permit to change the uses. And so the use is allowed, everything's good to go. And so again, granting 1.67 acres does meet the criteria and is allowed under all the plans. They are presently working their way through site plan, and we have yet to see architectural compliance, but that'll come next.
What's the allowed built-upon area if they are not granted?
If they're not granted, it's 24%. If they are granted, it's 70%.
And they are proposing to cover 44% with this exemption allocation according to their site plan.
Can you go back to the overhead picture of that? Figure 2 in the packet? I don't know if you have that in your report.
Yeah, it's in the report. I can pull that up.
No question. The main question is, okay, you said they were granted 21.98 acres. Can you show us on here, like, what is included in that? And I'm curious, are we going to be having this hearing 10 times more as the little pieces continue to, or is there only like 2 more spots left that they could ask us for this?
As he pulls that up, if I recall, I think the 21 acres included sort of that entire center and the outlots on what I'll call that side of the road. Yes, but let him pull that up. I
So it's
think,
just where those trees are in that picture?
I think so is what wasn't done at that time, and that's why you're seeing this evening.
Everything that was credited before was within like the horseshoe of the road, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a really small image. I apologize for that. I can zoom in on it, but as long as it suffices. I'm happy to watch JS. We can zoom in on this, but basically, you see this Mill Creek Road that creates this sort of C shape. Everything on this side of the C, these out parcels right here that are to be developed, as well as this, that's all the 21 acres. Kind of everything on the outside here. This was all open space. So it's basically this strip that fronts on Mill Creek Road, and then of course not the stormwater pond. So it's mostly this in here. So yes, it is possible you'll see 1, 2, maybe 3 more requests for exemption allocation.
Of the road is included in the 21 acres.
Everything in here is the 21.98 acres,
Now parcels, that little,
including this. This I don't know off the top of my head. I don't want to commit to saying yes.
I think that might be a separate tract under separate ownership.
not part of this
Yeah,
development at all.
correct. If I recall correctly, that's the former Poverty Hill, and I think that was some of the land that, you may recall at one time, there was some discussion of swapping over on the new, I'll call it the new ACE site with the airport authority and such. I think some of that land is in there, so I don't think that's under the Mill Creek development exactly.
BJ, did the applicants, so my math may be wrong, but it looks like by granting the watershed allocation, we're giving up 1.67 acres, and really all they're going to develop is 0.334 acres more than they would already be allowed to. Have we worked with them to try to see if they need it, if they absolutely need it? I just feel like watershed protection is to promote density where density makes sense, and this is not dense, nor does it necessarily make sense.
They do need it. They would not be able to make this work with 24 acres unless they buy a whole bunch more land. We also wouldn't want to necessarily spread out land uses quite that much. Now, the fact that it's not taking advantage, if you're going to grant the exemption allocation, the fact that it's not taking advantage of the full 70%, that's always a strategic debate, so I certainly appreciate your line of thinking. I highly doubt they'd be able to get down to 24 with the land that they have available. But they also, with the stormwater management and our landscaping requirements, getting much higher than that would actually not be. If you look at the site plan, I think the site plan was in the packet.
Yeah,
And if you look at that site plan, it's pretty well covered. There's a pretty steep slope in the back. And in fact, the back of the fuel center does have a pretty significant slope back there, but it's where all the stormwater goes, so.
So I just pulled up the GIS of Mill Creek Partners where the Harris Teeter is, and it's 21, on GIS, the measurement is 21.69 acres, and that includes the strip on the other side of that road. But there's another road called Poverty Hill, and there's other land on the other side of that, yeah.
The records show that that's pulled up on the monitor there as well. Yeah, in fact, I can click on the.
So yeah, everything in that black line, the contiguous black line, is part of that original watershed allocation.
Yeah, that's where I thought the question was coming. You have to take the entire project acreage, not what's actually going to be impervious, so.
Because you're promoting density.
If you're only going to develop 44%, the logical request would be, does it not make sense to lower the watershed protection request, which you're saying is not possible?
No.
Right, okay. And can you explain that to me like I'm a fifth grader? Maybe a third grader?
Maybe a little bit the inverse of exactly what you just said. You could not lower the request to represent only 44% of the site, because by statute, by law, you have to actually take what they call the project area, which is the entire acreage of what will eventually be a site plan in BJ's office. So you cannot reduce the amount that's being asked for unless you subdivide off a piece of property and
Right.
go through that entire process. The inverse of it, and I think where the mayor was headed, was either you get them down to 24%
Right.
of that acreage, in which case you no longer have to provide a permit, and that's difficult because of the topography involved and such, or you look for a development that gets closer to 70% so that you're maximizing the value of the credit you're providing. Because by providing the credit, you're allowing them up to 70%, but they're only choosing to develop at 44%. So
The 1.67 is dictated by the size of the entire
the parcel,
plot,
the size
and
of the
that's
project.
non-negotiable.
That is correct.
And there's no protection for the town as far as, is there anything we can do to protect trees or making sure that that land is not developed? Is there any logical thing we can ask for?
They call an area 7,200 square feet open space in their site plan.
So because of the topography, they can't do anything there, is what it looks like.
Right. If that's true, is there a way we can include their proposal into the record, and would that be binding? Do you understand my question? I'm not sure I
I believe
do.
I do, and I
Yeah.
think the short answer is no.
Okay.
At this point, yeah, the entitlements are kind of water under the bridge. This is merely a request for exemption allocation, and the town has already essentially approved a development plan for this area, so it comes with the plan has the town has approved a special use permit for the
Right,
development
you're
plan
right.
for Mill
No,
Creek.
we,
yeah.
and it's in fact not a nightclub, so there we go.
It's not ideal for watershed protection, but I see why it makes sense.
I pulled up the site plan here, and you can see a lot of the area around the parking lot, as well as the area between the parking and Mill Creek Road, as well as the land on the backside. A lot of that is set aside for reasons that are meeting our other requirements, such as landscaping. The slope on the back is pretty substantial. And so they're losing, if this was a different, if you think Discount Tire, this is Mavis Tire, if you think Discount Tire did not need exemption allocation, but if you picture that site, that development uses up a far greater percentage of the land because it doesn't have the constraints that this site does.
Plus, it was previously developed.
Yeah, it's not in a watershed.
Oh, it's not
So
even in the
the only
watershed.
reason I'm comparing it is as a visual comparison to another tire center, same land use, but a much greater percentage of the site is developed compared to this one.
Okay. All right, council, do you have other questions?
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion?
I move to approve WP 02-25 watershed protection permit for 1.67 acres on Mill Creek Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Director Grieve, thank you. Sorry, I know that when we start asking questions about the specifics, whether it's something you've planned for or not, you've got the answers, which I appreciate.
Thus the name Poverty Hill.
It was a bunch of teamwork. Town manager had a bunch of answers as well, and I wanted to say it's literally my job.
So glad that it is. Okay. All right, so we have our last item under the action items, AR-05-25, our architectural compliance permit for Pinehurst Hyundai.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm BJ Grieve with the Town of Southern Pines Planning Department. I have the pleasure of presenting here this evening, representing my colleague, Gene Ruiz, a planner 2 in our office, who worked on this project quite a bit with the applicants and were able to resolve quite a number of issues. The subject property is an area that everyone is very familiar with at the intersection there of US 1 and Murray Hill Road. You can see in your packet that the property is sort of a reverse L shape, including the property there with the blue roof as well as the open property next to it. So that does have a little bit of an influence. If you look at figure 1 in your packet, you will notice that in your staff report, you will notice the property, the way it's oriented, it does influence the street-facing facades of the proposed building. You can see that this is the site plan. And of course, with an architectural compliance permit, I'm sorry, I didn't do a very good introduction. This is a request for a Pinehurst Hyundai car dealership to redevelop the subject parcel. And in order to do that, it's general business. It is a by right use. It has highway corridor overlay. So the two things they need are go through site plan review as well as architectural compliance. So this is a request for an architectural compliance permit. It is greater than 10,000 square feet. It's 23,000 square feet, so it has to go to town council no matter what. This is the subject property, and as you may recall, many of our commercial architectural standards that are found in section 4.10.4 of the UDO, there are the 10 standards. Many of those are related to whether or not a side of the building faces a street or a street-facing facade. So the orientation of the site, as well as the orientation of the building, did play a role in our review of this project. We found that ultimately it did comply with 9 of the 10 criteria. There was one that we had a concern about that we noted in the staff board, just to make very clear to the applicant that the 2 doors that face, I got double mics going here. The 2 doors that face this way, according to the UDO, these may not be facing a street unless buffered. And of course, the highway corridor overlay buffer is a whopper of a buffer for a good reason. And then in a buffer, when you go by, the driveway that's going to get into the site is going to go by right in front of here. So there'll be a big gap in that buffering that will look right at those. But then the buffering standard says that perpendicular driveways going through the buffer are an allowable use in the buffer, which makes a lot of sense because you have to have access to the site. So given that, there really isn't a basis in the UDO to say that there's a problem with the orientation of those garage doors, even though they are sort of forbidden under many circumstances. The other thing is that if you're looking at that site plan, this is the left side of the building. This is the front of the building facing US 2. US 1. US 2 is in Kalispell, sorry. That was US Highway 93 and US 2 go right through Kalispell. So for years, I was always saying US 2, US 2, US 2, and so yeah, all right. Thank you for your patience. Everyone's like, US 2, where on earth? All right. That's funny. It happens. On the left side of the building, the side facing Murray Hill, about right here back is what's tucked behind the other property. So this is not actually a street-facing facade, which is why we don't have 25% windows between an elevation of 2 feet and 10 feet from here back, but from here forward, we do. We have the required windows in here.
So about that middle of the square section?
Yeah, roughly right in here, because this is where the garage bays are. Yes, this is where the garage bays are. So from here back here's where the garage bays are, right here. Sorry, yes. Yeah, the garage bays are right here. It's this area back because this is where it lines up down here with that other building. It's right here.
Okay.
Building materials are the required brick on all of the facades except for the front. The challenge with the front facade is, as you can see, we counted, in dealing with the front facade and determining 80% brick, obviously it is exclusive of windows and doors. So the first thing you do is you take out these windows right here, and then you take out these doors, and what's left is this fascia right here is a material that is labeled bronze aluminum composite material. The applicants do have an updated elevation that, just to correct a mistake in the one you're seeing right there, and I do actually want to go ahead and pull that up now. The applicant will also speak to it. One of the things you'll notice that's different on this elevation is that there is a brick wainscot at the bottom of the windows that are the showroom. And so it is a little bit different than the version you had in your packet. The calculations down here do include this brick wainscot down here on the bottom. That was the term you used, correct? Wainscot for the calculations down here do include the brick wainscot, but the image had not been updated. So the applicant got me an updated copy of this this evening for her presentation. So I want to go ahead and steal her thunder and speak to it now. But so you can see in the application, there is a deviation request for the percent of brick on the front. This aluminum material is not really any of the materials that are in there. In fact, metal is only supposed to be used, I think, for trim and for window and for door trim. And so this metal is really not a thing. So they are requesting a deviation for that. But that's the only formal deviation request. And we, our team, in looking at this, kind of weighing all of the progress we made getting this closer to compliance and coming down to just that one deviation. And our staff board did include a recommendation for approval that was tied to really the overall fact that it's a car dealership, it's a by right use, and it has the highway corridor overlay buffer in front of it. And so that buffer, once matured, will certainly offer some mitigation against the bronze aluminum composite material. But it's certainly at the town council's discretion and consideration. So, any questions for staff, or did I hit all the highlights adequately?
I think you did a good job. I think, I know council has questions, but I think for the applicant, is that correct? Okay. Thank you, Director Reeve.
Thank you.
I'll have the applicant come up. I'm glad that you made it here this evening.
Approach and it's on mute. You just press the button and walk over there.
Gotcha. Definitely gonna have to adjust this guy. Slight height discrepancy. Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren Krupsaw with Penny Design Group, the architecture firm representing Phil Smith Automotive for Pinehurst Hyundai.
I'm sorry, slow down, enunciate, and say all that again.
Sure. My name is Lauren Krupsaw. I'm here representing the architect Penny Design Group for Phil Smith Automotive and Pinehurst Hyundai.
Thank you, Ms. Krupsaw. Krupsaw.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you would like to, like information you'd like to provide before our questions?
Nope, I think everything that was included was accurate, so.
Councilman Goodman, I know you expressed before the meeting you had
did.
something.
Laura, did you or anyone from your firm, prior to like starting this design, visit the community?
Yeah, so we've been down here and in this area many times. Our firm did Pinehurst Toyota. It was before me and a few other dealerships locally in the area, but we have worked very closely with Phil Smith on many of their projects.
Can you point on this design any architectural feature that gives a nod to the community where you want to build it?
Yeah, so we did add the brick wainscot and we changed the complete building material, the main building material, to brick. We're also attempting to mimic some of the window proportions. Sure. So any tan that you see, is it working?
Is it on mute or is it?
Better?
You gotta hold it really close.
Better? No?
There you go.
Yep.
You're getting closer.
Okay, close. All up in my, I don't want to, too close. So any tan that you see is brick. We wanted to incorporate the Soldier Course wainscot as well. And then any of the windows that you see, we did try to show the kind of 1/3 to 2/3 ratio that is outlined in those architectural compliance documents.
So I guess more than my question was, is there anything about this design that you took from the community to incorporate into this building?
Not something specific, but we did review all the architectural compliance requirements in putting this together.
So to follow up on there was nothing that was a consideration in drafting these plans that tipped the hat to architectural impacts of Southern Pines?
Well, in the building material itself and in the
That's
kind of
being in compliance with, that's in compliance with the ordinance, but there's nothing where you say, oh, this looks like what it should look like in our area as far as,
specific example from downtown necessarily, but, you know,
To be downtown, but our community has spoken very loudly on what architecture is expected in our community. And part of it is in your own creative spirit, to incorporate that into some of these new, especially commercial construction. And more to the point, I feel like that if you're asking for a deviation from our standard, that I guess you would step it up. And this does, for me, does not.
what would you recommend?
I'd have to go back to school to answer that question. But, I mean, I would say, to be able to say, these are architectural features that we've put on this, that are unique to Southern Pines, or unique to the character in your community. And this is, to me, anywhere USA.
Okay.
And I know this is brand architecture, and I'm
It's not, though. We have adapted it to the town of Southern Pines architectural compliance requirements.
in general, in this picture, without being able to tell what's brick and what's not brick, this to me looks like any new ones that they build anywhere. And there's nothing in this style that makes it look like it's part of this community. And that's what our citizens expect.
Yeah.
And so a significant architectural feature that deviates, that enables you to continue your brand architecture, but also shows that this is not anywhere, is what I would expect.
I understand that, but I don't necessarily think it's fair to say that none of this does, and that the brick doesn't matter.
Well, the
'cause
brick
it does.
is a requirement.
Yes, it's a requirement, and we incorporated soldier course throughout. There's got a wainscot at the bottom and throughout the
So, and we
whole
can't
building.
require you to do what I'm suggesting. But if you're asking for a deviation,
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. I also want to express that, we have complied with 9 out of 10 of what is
Yeah.
required.
The brick requirement, I mean, I realize that it's hidden, part of it's hidden behind a building, but the brick requirement's 80% and it's down at 32. So it's a
For the front elevation, we are at 96 for the back and 90 for the two side elevations.
the front's pretty important, though.
Yeah, I agree. It's also behind a 40-foot landscape buffer that we will be meeting.
and you also understand you're before the Southern Pines Town Council with a
Understand that.
building that is named Pinehurst Hyundai. I just want to put that out there. That's a little insulting.
Okay.
I'm actually not kidding.
Chip, no.
Thank you.
If I may, since the landscape buffer came up, and it's as much a note for the TRC, but also for you to take back to whoever's doing your landscape planning, I hope that the landscape buffer will be planned and planted in such a manner. There's a long-standing problem with illegal parking in the right-of-way of inventory at this corner. I really hope to not see that with a new development there. We've been able to get away from it with some of the newer dealerships, and hopefully this corner gets cleaned up quite a bit. DOT came through and took down a lot of trees along the US 1 and 15501 corridors, so hopefully the replanning here can help address some of that, but also get away from the parking of inventory on the DOT right-of-ways.
Understood.
Just to be even more direct, I hope Mr. Smith's dealership is able to be built.
Yeah.
And that he is successful there. But I'm a complete hard no on this.
And I would join you on that, and I would ask a follow-up question. What is your understanding of the highway overlay buffer? What are the restrictions of that, or the requirement?
I'm not a civil
have no idea.
engineer. I have some idea as far as the building setbacks and the landscape buffer that we are going to comply with. But I am not a civil engineer, so I don't want to speak to anything that's out of my scope.
So what it sounds like, I mean, you all have comments?
Expected all of this, Laura, not. I think we've been kind of firm in our expectations, but based on what you have heard, would you have any suggestions now that could possibly,
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to visit downtown and pick out some architectural features specific, not just downtown,
Well,
but visit some architectural
in
features.
your own
but-
creative mind. And this isn't anything that, we're all going to write down, and when you come back at some other time, we go, well, you said this.
No, I understand.
Just in your own creative mind, What could you do different?
Kind of brick accents and detailing that we could do. We can always add, brick pilasters to the side of the showroom. There's plenty of flexibility. Design is an open-ended book, so,
I agree with that.
I mean, the world is our oyster. We could do a lot, so.
Like to see when we're granting any exception is that it doesn't just meet the rest of the expectations, but there's an attempt that it's not, like an attempt to make it look better, and that's why it doesn't meet the expectations.
Okay.
Bill, did you have anything? No. I'm going by first names tonight. Sorry. Okay, is there a motion or additional comments?
Well, I wonder if you're interested at this point in a motion to continue,
Next month?
or
I would say,
beyond.
if you think that you can come back with something better, I think that a
Oh,
motion to continue would be
100%.
nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. We don't intend to give up now, so we want to work with you all to get a building that is approved, for sure.
Creative
Are we
voice.
talking about next business meeting? Or-
It would be,
It'll
We
be
only have one-
August.
We only had one meeting in July, and
It's early though, right? No, it's
no,
late.
it's late.
It's late.
Second, 22nd, you're right, Ann.
That one?
Yeah.
or would you prefer to do August, where we are less likely to be stacked up? I mean, whatever. We do not have a work session in July, so we may be, I don't know. What do you think? Do you know, do you have any idea, or I guess I should direct that to both?
I mean, at this point in time, I'm not aware of anything that would stack that up. Again, that's
I
more than a
understand.
month off, but generally, July, as we talked about when you decided to go toward one meeting, tends to be light, because we've just adopted the budget, got beyond
Okay.
that, always subject to something coming along, but.
Have a Southern Pines request too, and I know that you have a huge project that you're trying to undergo. We have a director of planning who's going to be out of town for the first part of July, and I would like for that to not impose on his time off with his child in Oregon. So we are a small Southern Pines town, and we appreciate our little village, and if that's going to create a problem for Director Greaves, I want to hear about it now.
It's not. Our staff can totally handle it, and
Okay.
this is Gene Ruiz's project, he can handle, so the fact that it's July 22nd actually gives a couple extra weeks. It's not, normally, we would have to turn around in 2 weeks to get it into the packets.
Right.
In this case, we'll have 3 or 4 weeks to turn around and get it into the packet for July 22nd.
Great, okay.
I appreciate your awareness of my vacation, but our office plans around that stuff.
There is
Thank you.
nothing more important
Yeah,
than
my face is.
having some time with children.
New AR-05-25 architectural compliance permit for Pinehurst Hyundai to our July 22nd business meeting.
Is there a second? All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Crupsall, we'll see you hopefully next month.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see you in July. Thank you. Thank you for understanding and looking forward to a
Yeah,
name
we
change,
look forward to seeing
too.
what you have.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are now moving on to our consent agenda. Does the council have questions on the consent agenda as written?
No.
No?
The consent agenda?
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. I'm working on record time here.
You're going to beat Bill.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Thank you all so much.
Maybe we were 45.
No, you were 7. He beat you by 9 minutes.
I gotta say though, for everything we just accomplished. Okay, we have